So, welcome everyone on our 124th episode under Transliterature series and my Subconsciously Feminist Father. Unusually attracting topic and unusually attracting title, I must say. Message being very simple. Let us all raise feminist families. So, let us begin by knowing the author of this book. I would say the dynamic author of this book, which is a part memoir and a part manifesto. Yashika Singla. Welcome, Yashika, on our platform. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine.
Normally we do the mandatory introductions, but instead of these introductions, I would really request you to talk about yourself because you have such a prolific bio that I don't want to miss out on anything. So I would like you to talk.
Thank you so much. You're being really generous. I don't know how to start introducing myself, but I'm an architect. I've been an architect for almost nearly 20 years now, and I spent 7 years studying architecture. So it was quite a shock for me and for everybody that I moved to writing. And I just, this is my first book, my Subconsciously Feminist Father is my first book that I wrote a couple of years ago, and we finally have it in print with us. I've spent my time working as an architect and an urban designer in New York, Bombay, Pune, Goa. So I've had the fortune to live in a lot of different cultures and experienced a lot of different cultures and people. And that's, I think, what made it easier for me to write the book. And that's pretty much it. I've also been doing a lot of entrepreneurial work in the past 15 to 18 years, and most of it involved a lot of focus towards sustainability and sustainable practices, whether it was architecture or it was a startup that I tried in 2014 for biodegradable food packaging for the Indian food market. But I think I was too early on in the market and nobody was willing to make the switch. So it didn't really pick up. But I've also run a restaurant in Goa, and that was a successful one in 2016. And so all these different things, I think I'm just a greedy person for experiences and wanting to do more and learn more, and therefore all of these things and the book finally.
Amazing, because from being an architect to urban designer to serial entrepreneur to also being an activist for social change and sustainability. So you touched that a little bit, but I would still like to ask you, how did being an author fit into the bigger schemes of the things? You've already got hands full, and you've now written a book, which I must tell everyone, it's really worth a read, and you must all read it. We'll talk about the book subsequently. But yes, why an author now, and what next then? Yes.
Yeah, what next is always a tough question for me, because there's always so much I want to do, but I'm not sure how and when will I have the time. But how writing. So I think I really needed an outlet, and being the kind of person I am, I'm not very good at making conversations or talking to a lot of people. So I think writing came naturally, because there was still there. We all have so much inside of us. We all have stories and experiences, and this was my way of sharing it. And it was actually when I was going through a transition, and I was on like a personal transition from everything that I had done in those 15 years before that. And I was stuck in a lockdown in the US, and to boot to my misery, I was bedridden. And I think when someone's thrown adversities, that's the best time that you come up with something productive. And since I had nothing else to do, I had all these thoughts racing my mind, and about things that really used to bother me as a woman entrepreneur or as a married woman once. And so I just wanted to put it all out there. And I had the time. I think it was just an overflow of things and emotions that I put it on paper. And I never thought I was writing a book. I never knew how to write a book. But it just turned out to be one.
So right, it doesn't feel like a book. It feels like you're definitely writing from your experiences. As you just mentioned, it's a part memoir and a part manifesto. And with your vast experiences of having stayed across various exposure to various cultures, you've been able to talk about uh, roughly around 9 suggestions for parents for raising feminist families. So tell us about the book more so that people come to know. I must tell everyone, it's a simple but riveting and quite an engaging book. Facts we all know, realize, but difficult to acknowledge and experiment and implement, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, so like you said, the book has 9 chapters, and these were just the 9 things that I could think of at that moment that I really wish to talk to people about, and 9 things that, and more than people, mostly men, because I think we're not having enough conversations with men about our experiences as women in everyday life, and how those little experiences or little things that we live through every day can actually impact our self-confidence, our self-esteem, and our mental health to a great extent. But so we all read about and we all talk about civil rights for women and violence against women and all those things. Even if we're not completely educated about it, we're aware about its existence. But these are the smaller things that nobody talks about. These are the smaller things that we've normalized being okay for a woman to live through. But I was never okay with it. And I knew nobody around me was like, no other woman around me was okay with it. But we all started accepting it. So my book is just talking about those everyday experiences that I wish to share with men. And the reason that I want to share it with men is because for 2 reasons. One, I think we really need to have a conversation with men, and I know that they want to have it too. This was my way of having no resistance from the other side and only me talking. But the other thing was because I was raised by a man who subconsciously was a feminist, who didn't know what it meant to be feminist, who wasn't practicing it in his speech, who was very patriarchal um, in his speech. But the things, his actions and the things that he did for the 3 of us, me and my 2 siblings, made us the way that we are, made us so respectful of every gender, made us so resistant to these biases or these gender conformities that a lot of us tend to follow very naturally, unknowingly. And I thought that if him being such a advocate of patriarchy could still raise 3 children accidentally to be feminists, so can everybody else. And today we're more aware, we're more woke, we're more well-read. And so is why I thought I'll write those things down, what worked for me, what made me the way that I am. And I know a lot of other people, like you said, you could relate completely to the book. And
Yes.
it's just that so I wanted to put it down there, break it for. I have these 9 chapters with anecdotes from my personal life of the last 40 years, taking us to the point where I'm talking to men in my unsolicited suggestions after every chapter, because don't we all have unsolicited suggestions? I just got lucky and got mine published, but so my unsolicited suggestions are for men and for women to just keep a mental note of few small things that will help us all raise feminist families very
So,
easily.
right. So I think your father, this book definitely needs to be devoted to him, because that's how the trigger happened. That's how something in your mind, maybe childhood, how you were brought up. So you would say that was the way your father behaved in the family, the way your family was raised unconsciously or consciously by your parents. That was the main trigger in writing the book. You would say that?
I would say the trigger. The trigger were people who were constantly expecting me to behave a certain way just because I'm a woman. The trigger were people who would remind me at times, they would actually remind me at times that I'm a woman and therefore I should be quiet, or therefore I should do something, or therefore I should not do. I think those were the triggers. And why was I so triggered by them is what I identified later was because my father never spoke to me like that, or my brother doesn't speak to us like that. And I mean, whether I was in office or I was in a social setup, there were things that felt so disrespectful to me, and surprisingly to not enough people in the room. And those were my triggers.
I totally understand. And definitely, as you also said, that it should definitely be read by all men and women, boys and girls. It is not only the duty of a mother to be able to raise their sons well, it is also
Absolutely.
the duty of a father.
Absolutely.
And that was rightly shown in your family, definitely subconsciously or unconsciously, but definitely that is how this book, the handbook of sorts to raise a feminist family, I would say, came about. You know, you also said in the book that even the smallest of the actions by the parents can impact the world they create for the children. You mentioned that in the book. So tell us about your views on this, that how the actions taken by parents really impact the world that they create for their children.
So some would say, I'm not raising children myself, so what would I know? But I like to believe that I was raised once is why I know what will work and what will not to some extent. When we talk about the action that, like you just said, the actions that impact us growing up are little gestures, like the way that, the father talks to the mother, or the way that the father spends time with the mother. And it doesn't have to be, I've never seen affection. I've never seen affection between my parents. I don't know if they're even affectionate to each other. They're constantly on a banter, like I think most Indian parents that I've observed. But I always saw them supporting each other. I always saw them agreeing with each other's decision. I always saw them being there as a team for us. And those were the things that I did not see when I grew up. Those were the things that I saw missing in a lot of couples who would not come home and share their work stories with each other. And I thought, why would they not do that? Because I saw and I think also because my father's really talkative, and he loved to just come, and he would come and tell everything like that happened with his officers or his patients or whoever. And so for me, it was so normal for a couple to come and share everything that they experience. And when you don't see that, I think that's a big problem when couples don't share. I see that as a big problem between them, and a big problem for the children, because it's not just the affection that the children grow up imbibing. I mean, there are downfalls to that, but we'll not get to that. But like I say, like, the support that you see, the division of labor that you see, the division of, so my father never helped us with our studies. It was always my mom. But the things that he helped us, and mentioned that in the book, like he taught us how to be responsible at home. He taught us how to be responsible for ourselves, how to be responsible for every task at home. And I think those things you learn. It just makes you who you are. And the difference, I'd say, a lot of men I've seen my age who would go pick up their children from school, and that would be a favor they're doing to the wife today, that, oh, I had to pick up the children. And for us growing up, that was like, these are not the things that ever occurred to us, that my father's doing me favor, or he's doing my mother a favor because today he came to pick us up. It was always him because she was busy, and she would come when she has time. And I think, irrespective of whether your mother's a work, she's a stay-at-home mother, there's so many things that they need help with. And I would not call help is not the right word. They need equal division of responsibility. And I saw that growing up, and that just makes a lot of difference in the way that you look at other people and relationships as an adult.
So very right. I sometimes feel nowadays it's also to do when we're talking about sharing your problems, sharing your work life story. You're so involved in your day to day work, and also the distractions of social media right now. Because earlier, our parents did not know all about it. They were never into Instagram or FB or something. They were like totally family people. I could see it in my family, and your father definitely reminds me of my father, as I mentioned, because he was also as unassuming and as non-rule book, so as to speak. And frankly, subconsciously, I also feel, and after having gone through your book, and I also feel that he too raised a feminist family. He was least bothered or least concerned on rule books. He cooked, he helped us, dropped us to the school without anything, even mentioning a word about it. It was just so much natural for him. And
Aren't we just so privileged?
yes, we are privileged, I must say. So, your book definitely reaches to many fathers who've done the same, and now it'll reach to many fathers who feel, yes, this is how it should be. So, what reactions are you really expecting from this book, and what reactions you've already got? Maybe it's something that you'd like to share with us, like I shared my views of
Yes,
the
no,
book.
every reaction is very heartwarming. And when you told me that how it reminded you of your father, and how he was just the same, things like these make me just happier knowing that there are so many of us still out there. Like, we don't have to be disappointed with the ones who are still oblivious to the right way of doing things. But yes, I've had a lot of interesting reactions to the book, and especially two, I'll tell you, that come to my mind right now. One is my father's childhood friend, who's a dental surgeon, and he's in his mid-70s also. And he visited us recently, and I was there coincidentally. And he told me that, he said, I was reading your book, and after I finished it, I realized I'm a feminist. For me, that meant such a big deal,
I
for
can
a man to
relate to
come.
this.
Yeah, yeah. And then, and I know he is one. I've seen him growing up. He is one of the most um polite, gentle, and still firm people that I've seen in my life, who respects everybody equally. But for him to come and say, for a man to come and say, what, I realized I'm a feminist, was success to me. And because that is one thing that I wish for men to stop being averse to, the word feminism. I know, I mean, I'm against categorization and of any sort, but I think this is one word that we need to adopt for a while, till we start naturally uh, displaying characteristics that come with it. So I want feminist men to recognize that they are. I want men who are not feminists to recognize that feminism is not just for females. Feminism just means respecting all genders equally and treating all humans the same. And then there was another person who messaged me, and he said, thank God that I read your book. And today, when I came back home, I was waiting for my wife to return because I was hungry and the maid was on leave. And then I remembered that, what's the point of reading a book if I'm still going to wait for her to come back from work and make rotis for me? And he said,
So
so I
lovely.
attempted making, yes, he said, I attempted making rotis, and they were really bad, but the amount of happiness that I saw on her face was priceless. And he said, I think I'll start making better rotis now. And these things, these messages are, I don't even know how to respond to
Heartwarming.
them, because I wasn't expecting this. So there are a lot of men who are reading it and messaging me. Some have told me, it's rubbing us the wrong way, but we're so glad we're reading it. So it's reminding us of our privileges. And And yes, I'm still eager to hear more and get more reactions. But yeah, women have been sending me screenshots of anecdotes or lines where they either cracked up or they shed a tear. And again, like I said, I every time I read that, I take like a few days to soak that in.
So, I must tell everyone that finally we have a book and we need to be, people will learn to be proud to being a feminist, because it's something that you have to be proud of, I must say. That,
Absolutely.
right. And this teaches you how to be proud of this and all these small incidents. And just, I think all men and even women, they'll all get up and give it a thought, because it's written simply. You can pick it up from any chapter and still come to a fantastic unsolicited advice by Yashika. That is also the high point. All these, it's kind of a summary of what you've gone through, and then her perspective and her suggestion how to deal with it. So that's interesting. That's why I told you I need to read the book, finish it, and then talk to you. That's very important. So, your father, as I noticed, has been very straightforward. And I love the first chapter of Name Tag, and also loved your unsolicited advice on having a name tag. I mean, you would like to talk about it? Like you said, that rose by any other name, or you rather quoted somebody, would smell as sweet. So that's a very important chapter, I would say.
You think? Thank you. I it's very close to my heart, that
Yeah.
this subject, because I spent a lot of time where I had to constantly defend why I wanted to keep
Yes.
my name. And it's just so simple, you've grown up with that name, that's your identity. And you take pride. There's a certain pride that comes with the sound of it. And I just wish people had the choice, or even women understood that it's a choice that does not involve disrespect, that does not involve disregarding a culture or a tradition or a family or a gesture. And it's just so beautiful to be you, be your name, and be accepted that way. And I think I would have not understood it if there were not so many people trying to change my name or forcing to change my name when I was almost 30. And yeah, and I know a lot of people, they feel happier changing the name, and so be it. I mean, all I wish for us is to not judge someone. Like I said, a rose would still be a rose. I would still be doing these things if I was Yashika Shrikant Bakri. And I would still not, probably not be doing these things if I was Yashika Singla. So how does a name matter? It's like, why do we attach so much um, family pride and all of this in having to change a woman's name? And this is still a last name. I know so many people in our parents' generation who've had their first names changed because they got married. And some are happy with it, some are not. I just wish for those who are not happy to be. Like, let us all let everybody else just be.
And you mentioned in very, very uncomplicated manners that, it was just matter of factly in your family mentioned, and they didn't make a big deal whether you're writing just Yashika in your passport or you just the bank account reference that you've mentioned. Yes, and it makes, I mean, after reading that, I feel it does make your life so much of a difference. I remember after getting married, changing all the account names and changing the passport name was a big problem. And my father-in-law wanted all the, for his reasons, practical reasons or whatever. But I still remember going back that it made so much of a difference. You were filling up so many forms, so much of complication. So as you said, let it be. Let it be.
Let it be, yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
still had to. I still ended up changing so many government documents and putting affidavits that Yashika and Yashika Singla and Yashika Shrikant Bakri, they're all the same people. But I mean, it's just such an unnecessary drill that we've included in our lives.
Complicates us. Yes, yes. Your chapter Go Team is how it should be at home. And yes, I think again, I would say all the chapters I think when I talk about them, or I've read them, they're all very important. But then, yes, so what are your suggestions to maintain the status quo at home so that children behave similarly? And there's Go Team chapter, if you could talk about it a little bit.
One thing, most important that I think, and again, I've observed, these are all mostly just my observations. What I've observed between parents is there's always one parent that the child can go to. When there's a good cop, bad cop playing, there's always one good cop. In our case, there was no good cop. There were both bad cops. So we could never take a complaint from our mother to our father or from our father to our mother. And again, like I said, maybe there are other downsides to it. But for me, what that meant was that they're equally, they're both the king and the queen. They both have to be like, I cannot get away with complaining about one to the other, or I cannot get. So I think that is very important growing up. And I see a lot of children, they'll like a lot of mothers telling the fathers, don't talk to him like this, or don't talk to her, or don't tell her, whatever. Like they'll probably, whether it's in a lighthearted humor or just to make the just to pacify the child, they'll just scold the parent. One parent would scold the other. I never saw that. And I think that's very important. That's very important for the child to build respect for both parents equally, that, their words are equal. And that's the foremost thing for a team to remember, that, they're both indispensable. They're both equally valuable. Yeah. And have to be respected the same. The second is, I think it's just comes with a lot of empathy. Like I said, and I believe empathy and affection are two different, like they're not directly proportional, because and I'm repeating myself, I've never seen my parents being affectionate to each other, but they have a lot of empathy for each other. They had empathy for, if she had longer working hours, he would make sure that he's present at home. And if he has longer working hours. So just these things, filling in for each other,
Mutual
is
respect.
how you are a perfect.
Yeah.
Mutual respect, and like I said, filling in for each other. You have to fill in for each other. That's all. Those are two major things that I think as a child for me made a lot of difference. That, I never felt the absence if my mother was a working woman, or if my father was like posted out of town.
So right. And another chapter, and in which I really love that you've quoted Chimamanda Ngozi, another very favorite author of mine. This is on What's Your Color? And I would like to read the quote that because you're a girl is never a reason for anything ever. How important. Very important. Very subtle, but so I would request a bite from you on this, especially.
So I think I've also written it down in my book. And I've always remembered it, that when I was growing up, I think I was 8, 9, 10, 11. And someone said a bad word. We were all playing and someone said a bad word. And then we took it all to my father, and he said, like, why did you use this bad word? And that boy said, who was almost the same age, he said, because I'm a boy. He said, but would you like if she used that word? And he said, no, but she's a girl. And my father said, but if it's bad for a girl, it's bad for a boy. And that stuck with me forever, because even for me, before he said that, there were differences. I believe that boys can say certain things and girls cannot. And when he said that, if it's wrong for a girl, it's wrong for a boy. I think I've taken this in the last 30 years quite literally. And I really wish so. Like I was talking to someone earlier, and she said, "How do you know when is the right time to pull back?" And sometimes we're conforming to genders so instinctively that we don't know that we're doing it. And I said, every time you're confused or every time you want to check yourself, just ask yourself this one question: am I doing this because he's a boy or because she's a girl? Because you're a boy or because you're a girl should never be the reason for choosing a color or an activity or a profession. And And I really wish that we start using this sentence a lot more. And thanks to Chimamanda for, her book is such a simplified version of a conversation between her and her friend. And I think that's what inspired me that, let's have a conversation. Let's have more conversations like those. And that's all. I wish for us to make this a norm. Let's just ask ourselves, like, is it reason enough because you're a girl or because you're a boy?
So, right. And also in the chapter 8, again, Boss Lady, you mentioned that boys need to be taught that they're not special. I think from Indians' perspective, that is a mindset sometimes we have to counter. So, I mean, and you've also said that we should encourage our children to speak up their mind, tell sons to respect, duty of, again, both the parents to be able to raise independent women. So definitely, again, I would like you to talk about this Boss Lady chapter. It's again very important.
So again, because I was raised with all our friends and family being working women. So for me, it was very natural that women work and women are bosses and women, it's, and then, like I said, I grew up and I see a completely different world. And it's especially this one time when I was running a restaurant and I had a chef who was, I think, one of the most difficult men to deal with, because he could not tolerate the fact that he was running a kitchen for a woman. As much as he loved running the kitchen, as much as he loved the profession that he chose, he just could not tolerate that there was a woman who was calling the shots. And there was a series of disasters that led one after the other because of just that reason. And that's what I mean. And he was someone who was probably a few years older than I am. And again, very well read, traveled around the world, lived in Europe and back. But maybe he was never taught that it's okay for a woman to be leading you. It's okay for a woman to be coming and asking you a question. And because even at a simple question, which came out of curiosity, he would throw a fit. And that's what, when I realized, like, it's just all about how you are raised. Why was it not normalized for you that, wherever you'll be working, there'll be women working with you, or managing you, or you managing them. And again, I think that comes more from fathers. I think fathers are very underrated as a parent, and their contribution in raising feminists is completely unrecognized. And I think the amount of impact that their behavior can have on a son, not just on the daughter. Daughters are more observant. Everybody's putting more attention onto a daughter, and the daughter is anyway facing a lot of prejudices that she wants to break free of. But the son who's living a life of privilege and comfort, has to be consciously fed positive, all this positive behavior by the father. So if he sees the father respecting women, if he sees the father talking about women fondly, or looking up to other women, and even if it's just done once in his lifetime, that's it. That's all that it will take for a man to understand that, women can be bosses, and women will be the bosses.
Your book will definitely lead to many conversations, and I hope it does so, and everybody reads it as a handbook. And because you're so right when you mention in the book that we all participate in patriarchy by perpetuating strict gender roles. But of course, you're so right when you say that no tradition or culture or religion is good if it teaches you dominance. So, any last word? I've had such a wonderful conversation. And anything else that you would like to mention? Because you also say that who you raise is what really matters in the end, and what really continues in the end. And that is the legacy we need to leave behind. And that is the legacy we need to follow. So something that you'd like to mention at the end of our conversation that perhaps we missed out.
Yeah, no, thank you. You just said that. I really deeply believe who you raise really matters. I am not raising anybody, so I don't have the privilege or the opportunity, is why I wish for more people raising other human beings to read my book. And like you, it's it's interesting you call it a handbook, so we'll start calling it a handbook now. It's such an easy handbook. It's written by someone who has a very little attention span for reading things unless they're interesting, is why I've tried to make it an
Yes.
easy read, a quick read, and more like it's just me talking to other parents. So I wish for parents to read this. I wish for parents to share this book with other parents. And yes, just figure out how easy it is to raise feminist families, and what wonderful society we'll be making if we're doing all of this, and it's and I wish for people from this book to understand, um feminism is for all of us. Feminism is for the our children to have a better life. Feminism is for our sons to be not confused or anxious anymore as to what does it mean to be a man in 2023 or 2050. And yes, I wish for people to just spend a couple of hours, read this, practice it, and start from home.
How wonderful. And thank you. Yashika, was such an enlightening, very encouraging conversation and very enlightening, as I just said that. And I'm incredibly grateful to Rupa for introducing and believing in such a wonderfully written book. And thank you for them for putting also this session together and making
I
me.
think it's absolutely a delight speaking to you, and
Thank you.
it's just an honor to have my first conversation with you, and to know your thoughts and to hear the excitement in your voice. It's just it's absolutely wonderful for me. It's a privilege for me. Thank you.
I wish you all the great success of the book, and I wish and hope more and more people read the book. And I shout out to everyone to please subscribe to our channel, Transliteration Series. You will come to know about all the content that we put together and all these enlightening and very encouraging discussions that we have from time to time